now that I understand the structure, what I want to do is to only extract the columns, each columns that we have inside each rows. So I go back to Procesio, I close this, and I'm going to import in Canva a new JSON action that is called JSON Mapper to list, this one, which is here, okay? And I will ask this action to put in a new variable only the columns information that I want, okay? So in input, in this JSON mapper, I put the readable output variable that we have from the first nodes, and then I have to put a jQuery expression to filter really what I want. And if you remember what we have, here we have a data object, then we have an array of rows, and I want all the rows, and then I want the columns inside all these rows. So it should be represented like that. So I want, of course, so the first dot is the root, then I want what is in the data object, I want other rows, and I just want to keep inside the rows the columns. And I'm storing these columns inside a new variable that I'm calling rows. I click on it. It's of type object, and it will be a list because it's an array. It will be a list of object. And I will show you how the rows variable looks like. So I run my process, I check it, okay, so the process has been completed, very fast, you see. And let's have a look at the row. So I click on this action, and you see now from the Retable output JSON, the big one that we have received at the beginning, now with thanks to the JSON mapper, I have this information only that is containing only my 2 rows. So now I will copy the result of and the content of this variable to keep just the history of it. So I copy all this data inside this JSON online parser, and this is what we get. So the output of our JSON mapper to list action is a list, of course, so it's an array, and it has 2 sub-array. This sub-array, of course, represent our rows in the Retable. Now to continue, it's important to understand what should be the format of the data that we need to send to Google Sheet. So let's go to the Google Sheet documentation. So I am now in the documentation of the Sheets API of Google, and you can see that in the read and write cells value, there are different methods. You have like reading methods and writing methods, and of course we want to write inside our Google Sheets, so we need to look at the write, and what we want to do is to add the new data, the new rows in the Google Sheet, so it will be the append method. So when you open the append method page, you have all the information to be able to send your post request and then to add data in your Google Sheets. So you have to send a post request to this URL, and you understand that there are 2 at least the 2 most important information parameters are the spreadsheet ID and the range, and I will explain you what does it mean. So the spreadsheet ID, similarly to Retable ID, you find it here. This is all this information here that represent the ID of your specific sheets. And the second parameter is the range. So it's where the value are appended after the last row of the tables. So if you want to add all the rows, the one after the other in your Google Sheet, you just put A1 and it will just continue to populate your Google Sheet table without any issue. And there are other parameters, and I will explain you how to use them, to use the API call to Google Sheet. So now what is important is to understand how to format your data, be able to post them to Google Sheet. So this is in the request body. So if you click on this link, then you go to this page that explains what they call the value range. So this is the format of the body that you have to send to Google to be able to append your data in your Google Sheets. The first key range is not mandatory because we are going to input them in our query parameters. So here, if you see, you already have this range, so we don't need it. The second one that they call major dimension is for you to define if you want to append your data in a rows format or in a columns format. Okay, because we are going to receive rows from Retable. Okay, it's easier, of course, to consider that we are going to input rows as well. So the major dimension will be defined to rows. Actually, it is the default, so even if you don't put it, it will be rows by default. And the most important, finally, is the values. And you understand that the values, it's an array. It's a list of array. Okay, to understand how it works, you can look here, explain it a bit, how it works, and you will see it. Finally, it's quite easy. So here, you see how it looks like. So we have our first array, okay, the outer bracket represent this array, and inside you have other array that represent your rows, and each value represent one cell. For example, here they want to have like just a table of 2 by 2, so 2 lines, the first line and the second line, and 2 columns. So in the first line, first column you have 1, then you have first line, second column 2, then you go to the second rows, you have 3, and second rows and second column you have 4. So this is how we need to prepare our data. We have to prepare an array of array, and each array will be the rows that we have received from Retable. Okay, now that we have this information, if you remember what we have now, it's an array of JSON with many information like the column ID, the title, the cell value. But we don't need all of that. What we need is an array that just have the value. So here for the email we just want this value, for the last name we want this value, and for the first name we want this value. And we want a first array that is containing this value only, and then a second array that's containing the value of the second rows. So to do it, I think the simplest method is to use Python code that will transform all of this data to the array that we want to have. Okay, so to summarize, the array that we want to have should be like this. So we remove this, remove this one, okay, this second cell of our first row should be this one, and the last one should be this one. Okay, so that should be, and then of course you repeat the same for the second rows. So that's what we want to have. So we want to be able to transform such structure to such structure, and this is where we are going to use our Python code.